This was many years ago. It was at the annual event of my company, which was a management consulting firm within the Tata Group. And I had joined the company just a couple of years earlier. Mr. Tata was the chief guest of the event, and my boss made a presentation about the performance of our company, how our revenue had grown, what we were doing in profits, and other similar business metrics. At the end of the presentation, when Mr. Tata spoke, he said, in the context of the Tata Group, what you're doing is relatively small numbers. Your revenues and profits are almost meaningless in the overall group. However, what would be more interesting for me to see is what are you doing with your clients? How much new revenues or cost reduction have you achieved for your clients? What new business ideas of growth for the future have you created for them? The important metric for you to think about is the long-term impact that you are creating for the group.
Welcome to Value, a podcast where gurus from Global Gyan Academy help you create competitive advantage in your career. Learn how you can win in the future of work and uniquely design your career from those who have succeeded and failed at doing so. Now, here's your host, Srini from Mumbai, India.
In today's episode, I want to share a bit of my career story. I hope this story is not just an interesting story, but has some learnings for everyone, including for me as I recount it. The story begins many years ago, and obviously at that time I was a kid. My grandfathers, both of them, were from the academic world. They had been lecturers and principals of colleges, and they used to tell everyone who cared to listen to them at that time that Srinivas will become a professor when he grows up. I didn't really think much about it. It was just old people talking about their grandchild. The first time somebody actually asked me about what my choice of career was when I was in school. I think I was in the 5th or 6th standard, and there was an event hosted by Uncle Pai of Tinkle and Amar Chitrakadha fame. The session was on careers, and most of the kids who were there were older kids in 8th, 9th or 10th, but I was interested in just meeting Uncle Pai, so I gate crashed even though I was much younger than all the other participants. Finally, it was my turn to speak about what my career plan was, and I said, I want to be a detective. There was a lot of laughter. Everyone was amused, and Uncle Pai smiled and said, why do you want to be a detective? I said, no, I'm really inspired by the 3 investigators, and actually Fatty of the 5 Findouters is my favorite character. I just love the way they find clues and solve difficult problems. That sounds like a good job to have. I forgot all about that as the usual rush of learning into high school and everything and began. And when it was actually my turn to make some difficult choices, I chose engineering. When I didn't know anything really better at that time, when I looked around, there were 2 options that everybody was pursuing. Either you became an engineer or a doctor. And I knew what I didn't want to be amongst those 2. So engineering was kind of the default choice. Meanwhile, I liked to write a lot. When it was English as a subject, my essays always scored high marks, and I used to just enjoy the idea of imagining things and writing. But I had never published anything. In those days, there were not too many options for young kids to perhaps publish. And the first chance that I really got to write something formal for a media outlet was for the Times of India's youth supplement. And that's when I met Rashmi Agarwal, who is now known as the famous author Rashmi Bansal. She was one of the 2 editors of that supplement, and later she went on to start the Jam magazine, Just Another magazine, which was for youth. And I worked a lot with Jam, with Rashmi, where I wrote, edited, sold. I did a variety of things. In fact, I believe I spent more time moonlighting for Jam during my engineering days than actually attending classes in college. And I felt like I had found my career calling. Writing and working with a magazine seemed like the best thing that I wanted to do. But then I got an admission into IIM Ahmedabad. 2 years earlier, before the admissions, I didn't even know what an MBA was. My roommate's elder brother got an admission into IIM Ahmedabad, and he was very excited. Oh, my brother got into an IIM, and all of us got excited about this idea. What is this IIM? What is this MBA? And almost like a challenge that let's also do it. We started preparing for it, and fortunately, I got in. And during my MBA days, marketing appealed to me the most as a career idea. It seemed highly connected to my writing and what I thought were my creative skills. So I not only did a lot of projects and had fun doing marketing learning, I took all the courses in the second year and the electives that were available in marketing, and I seemed to be doing quite well in the area of marketing. It was natural that I would try for the top marketing jobs, and everyone expected me to get into one of the leading FMCG companies in terms of a job. And let me not go through that painful experience of what happened during my MBA placements. It's in fact documented in an article. You can find the link in the show notes. But the result of that experience was that the only job I got was in management consulting, an area that I used to make fun of. I used to look at everybody who was preparing for consulting jobs, and I used to say, no, only those who don't know what to do give gyan to others, and consulting is not real work. And that's the job I got. So, in fact, in the first year of my work, all I was thinking of was, how can I escape from here? And one easy escape route that came to my mind was, let me do a PhD, because if you study further, no one questions you really in terms of why you're doing it. Particularly in India, studying further is always seen as a good thing. So I thought, let me do a PhD and in the US and maybe get into academics, teach something in future. And I was kind of mulling over this and preparing for my application. But as this process of preparing for the PhD was happening, I started appreciating the work that I was doing. I realized that some of the projects that I got in my consulting work were pretty interesting. They weren't as theoretical as I thought consulting would be. And I realized that being a consultant was a bit like being a detective, looking for clues, relevant data, searching for them, analyzing all that information, finding solutions. It was actually being a detective. That's what I wanted to be, and I realized that being a consultant was exactly what I had perhaps dreamt of. I just didn't know that a consultant was like a detective. And a few years later, I moved from consulting into a more operating role, but in the space of strategy and marketing. And I continued for several years, almost the 15 years that I worked with in the corporate world, as a job that really identifies problems and finds solutions. Being a detective was what I was enjoying and what I was. And then things don't go on for too long. A good thing doesn't last, because whether it is the external world or sometimes ourselves, change is natural. And about 10 years ago, I received, like many of my fellow alumni must have, an email from the dean at IIM Ahmedabad. And in that, he had written about how alumni could help the institute. And one of the ideas that he had suggested was that we could teach some courses at the institute and therefore give back to the institute in terms of our learning experiences. I thought to myself, why not? That sounds interesting. And I had done a lot of work in the area of mergers and acquisitions. Uh, I would say some very interesting cross-border acquisitions had been done by me and my company. There was a lot of learning, and I felt that perhaps it's worth sharing. So I wrote back to the dean, and after some rounds of discussion and designing the course, my course on cross-border M&A was now a thing. It was going to be offered at IIM Ahmedabad, and I was going to be teaching at the same place that I had studied many years earlier. That day, the first session when I had to teach, I landed in Ahmedabad at the airport, and I just got out and saw a driver with a placard, and the placard read, Professor Srinivas. It felt at that moment like all the dots had been connected. What I had dreamt of, what others had dreamt of. I didn't know what I wanted to do, or I thought I knew something about what I wanted to do. And now I could see the dots connecting. All of us build dreams of what we want to do, who we want to be. And of course, we must dream, because without a dream, there's nothing. But instead of the dream being a guide, a shapeshifter, something that is not so rigid, but we most often get stuck with a rigid picture of this dream, and we create notions of this is what I love and this is what I hate. And often, for most of us, in reality, what we love doesn't always happen, but something else comes along. But what do? We ignore that something else because we are pining for what we love, and we remain in that pain. But what we thought we loved may not happen, and we may have ignored that interesting other thing that came along. And this is the biggest mistake we can make when we think about our careers. In strategy, we have this concept of deliberate strategy, something that is clear and we all follow it. We are extremely focused. It's exactly what we want to do, and we don't want to deviate from that path. But we also teach that organizations must be prepared for new ideas, new opportunities, some deviations in the main path. These come along, and you have to be prepared to pursue them. And this is called emergent strategy. Sometimes the emergent strategy evolves to becoming the new deliberate strategy. Similarly, in our careers, we obviously pursue the idea of a deliberate strategy. Don't let that make you blind to emergent opportunities. What I may have thought I didn't like based on some limited knowledge, based on hearsay, could turn out to be the thing that I've always wanted to do. And that is the rule or the learning that I've had about my own career that I believe is, at least has worked extremely valuably for me. I must dream about what I want to achieve. We must all dream about what we want to achieve, where we want to get to, but don't make it a rigid target and just stay only on that path. Even if that path is not happening, be open to new paths. Sometimes you may be forced to go into another path because there is no other option. But whatever path you are on, if you give it your best, you may find that you will start loving it. Finally, after so many years of muddling around various paths in my career, I think I have found what I have always wanted to do for now and in future. I am on a mission of helping others build their capabilities. And as a consultant and a teacher, I remember daily what Mr. Tata said 20 years ago, that what matters most to me is the impact that I help create. Not just the numbers on which my business and my activities and my company's activities could be measured. Yes, those are important. But more important to me is when the individuals and organizations that work with us, if they fulfill their potential, if they can achieve what they could do, that is a dream worth pursuing, and that is the inspiration that drives me, and I know a lot of my colleagues and my partners and faculty at Global Gyan is this pursuit of the dream of the impact that we can create through the learning, through the experience sharing, through the coaching and everything else that we do. I wish you all a wonderful 2021. I know that it is filled with immense possibilities. So let's go and grab them.
Thanks for joining us in this episode of Value. Make sure to visit our website globalgyan.in, where you can subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. You can also download the Global Gyan app to access additional content, learning and mentoring by the gurus at Global Gyan. Do tune in to our next episode.